고요. 피타 린자는나 저 태국 전진환 대표님을 큰 박수로 맞이하겠습니다.
안녕하세요. Excellencies, distinguished guests, beloved friends, fellow freedom fighters and Democrats. Good morning from Seoul, a city that learned democracy the hard way, but keeps teaching the world that renewal is possible. My name is Pita Limjaranrat. I'm a former Prime Ministerial Designate of Thailand, 2023 election winner, and a deposed parliamentarian. I'm a byproduct of a backsliding, but I'm not giving up yet. You know, I had a speech prepared, but because I'm so fascinated by the events organized by KDF, the building that we are in, and the previous two speeches that were given, so I decided to speak from my heart instead. Because it's an absolute honor to be inside the National Museum of Korean Democracy, a place where it was once full of horror, and that horror has turned into hope. The struggle has turned into strength, and it tells us that memory is not a preserved silence, but it's a moral responsibility, for the future to safeguard democracy. And we in Asia know that democracy is not given. It is made and often remade from time to time. Thailand and South Korea, we shared a lot of parallels in the past. Dictators after dictators. 1976 for us, 1980 for you. 1987 for you, 1992 for us. But we went through different trajectories. The year I was born, 1980, our GDP per capita was the same. And we were fighting against military coups, freedom of speech, human rights, dignity, the liberty of life. But you managed to come through 1998, 1999, 1989, 1990. But for Thailand, we were stuck with 13 military coups. Number 2 behind Libya, a bit above Honduras. But because, we shared so much common, and we realized that repression and renewable in the past was possible because of the Korean experience. So the structure for my speech, because I decided to go off script, and I have to apologize to the translator in advance. I promised to be structured, to be short, concise, and sweet. The structure of my speech is pretty simple. It's really a build-up with the 2 previous speeches also. I have 2 questions and 3 calls to action. I think the questions that we in this room have to collectively try to answer so that we can move forward as a region is that if we know that repression and renewal in the past we had overcome, what makes the 21st century different from the past? That's the first question. The repression now and the repression from the previous generation is totally different. And I think, VDEM spoke about it, professors spoke about it. That's one thing that we have to really realize. The second question is, backsliding is global. So what's unique about Asia? It could be coups in Africa. It could be strong populism, strong men populism in Latin America. But what makes Asian characteristic of backsliding unique to us? And that's two questions that I put upon this room and give you a minute to think. Backsliding is global. What's unique about Asia? To me, with my friends here in this room, I come up with three unique characteristics of why Asian backsliding is quite different from many other things. First, bloodline politics. Democracy becomes a family business. It becomes an asset. And the transition of power is not institutional, but deeply sticky. It's very personal. And you can see throughout Southeast Asia, you can through some South Asian countries, you can see some even East Asian countries are coming up with the same last name as their previous generation, as their fathers. Number two, weaponized courts. Back in the days, it's the violence on the street. Now, it's the violence in the courtroom. Before, it was warfare. Now is lawfare. Before, it was military coup. Now is judicial coup. And third characteristic of Asian backsliding is high-tech military, digital autocracy. The smartness of the digital, the misinformation, the deepfakes that are coming up, the ability to surveillance citizens. Before you could mobilize something, they could censor it like how it is today, not like the previous generation. In short, it's exactly to your point. Slow institutions versus fast autocrats. Whiplash, muscle velocity. Our institutions, no matter how good they are in our Asian countries, they're designed to be deliberative. They're designed to be cautious. They're designed to be slow. They're designed to be consultative. But autocrats nowadays all around the world, including my own country and other parts of the world, they have millions and thousands of fake news coming out and all the propaganda and all the narratives that are coming, so that, the people cannot organize it at the same time, not just only in South Korea, but other parts of the world, they cannot mobilize as an opposition. Judiciary takes time, legislature takes time, independent organizations takes time, but autocrats, they have these things coming out in executive order and things like that, so you could not cope. And at the same time, democracy does not die in darkness anymore. It dies from boredom. It dies from frustration. It dies from exhaustion, hollow elections, fake consultations. So this is the way that is happening all around the world. So, which brings us to 2025. It's not even a debate anymore that repression and renewal is possible in our region as a whole. The responsibility before us is to decide that renewal will prevail over repression. So what do we do next as a region? Not just as a one particular country or one particular segment of the society, whether it's academic, NGO, former politicians like myself. I have three calls to action for us to think upon. First, Asia must step up. Asia must step up. Asia in the world with no rules. When other parts of the world, the Western world, too divided and too distracted. And Asia must show the world that democracy is not a foreign import. Democracy is a lived experience. It's a way of life. It's not just institutions and checks and balance and having boxes to check, but it's embedded in our schools, in our workplace, in our parliaments. And we have to show that rule-based world order is still the way to go. And in Thailand, as we see the absence of the Americans and the Europeans as they are too divided and too distracted, we started to see Asian way of democratic and human rights, from Japan, from South Korea, from Taiwan, and I think that's a good sign, but I think we really have to show that, it's a way of life and it's part of Asian DNA. And that's my first call to action. Number two, Democrats must deliver. If democracy is not effective, is not efficient, and cannot deliver results, people will look elsewhere. The autocrats will come up with a better excuse, try to find an enemy, and say that democracy doesn't work. So it's really about Democrats, about politicians to really think about the value chain of how they run their campaigns and how they exercise power and deliver results to the people. Using the technology, using a lot of volunteer management in order for us to deliver. And the last and the third call to action is that the youth must decide. In Asia, we're the largest bloc of democracies, the youngest out of all the continents. The youth must decide contribution over cynicism because it's fatigue by design for them. Autocrats are trying to make politics as boring as possible, as dramatized as possible. And if they are thinking cynicism and they feel like democracy is irrelevant to them, if they feel indifferent, it's not sensational enough for them to go out and vote. And that's how democracy dies. So I encourage and call for action to the youth of Asia to choose contribution over cynicism, choose passion over passive indifference, and that's how we are going to move democracy forward in Asia. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for having me. วันนี้ขอประกาศต่อหน้าทุกท่านในที่นี้ว่าเวลาของพวกเราได้มาถึงแล้ว
ฝากกดไลค์ กดแชร์ กดติดตามและกดกระดิ่งให้ด้วยนะครับ